We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And the very, very astute and keenly watching among you on YouTube will notice that Tom has no video this week, and yet Tom is here. We warned last week he might not be, but he has made the effort to be here. However, with the house being basically boarded up for the next month there. He doesn't have his...
It's not quite a month, but yes, it's going to be a hot minute. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So he's a logo on YouTube, but my face is here, and I guess you can watch me over on this side. Hello, do such interesting things.
You can see the images when they come up.
That's right.
If they come up.
There's not that many this week, but there will be some.
That's right. See, I leave and the questions dry up, Rob.
It did seem so. Yeah, we got many fewer questions than we normally do. So I don't know what's going on. It was Memorial Day week, right? In the U.S. Could have been something. I don't know.
It is theoretically possible that we have answered everything multiple times.
That is kind of true.
Not only is it kind of true, it is definitively true. We have answered
I don't know how to
everything.
Like obviously we've never put a ton of effort into actually trying to expand our audience. So I would love to have more of just the beginner questions and that. There's no way that they would be searching for us to find us. So that that's all right. We'll find a way to talk about something because we would anyway every week. So
that's right.
That's all right.
Speaking of finding things to talk about, what'd you watch?
Oh, what did I watch? Yes. So I'll start with Barry, which was the series finale, fourth and final season of Barry on. Is that HBO in the States? I don't know what thing that is on. Anyway,
Max.
It's Crave for me up here.
Your good friend Max.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have a thing to say about Max in the news. But yes, the Barry series finale. So I loved this whole series, the entire show. It was I enjoyed it a great deal. Yes, it was definitely darker and very little humor in this final season. The stuff people were saying about seasons 2 and 3, I thought it was still funny those seasons, but season 4, it was definitely much more into the drama scale, although they still put in laughs here and there because that is what they do. But
Bill Hader, I mean, how are you not going to laugh at that guy every once in a while?
But the finale itself, I can't say it was my favorite episode. I thought everything that occurred, the events that occurred, it all made sense. Throughout the series, how the creators feel about Barry the character, so it wasn't a shock the way that they ended. There was a shock, and then the overall, whatever, I don't want to give spoilers away, but the overall feeling of how everything played out and the actual events that played out, everything made sense. It was a good conclusion that way. But I think where I have a little bit of it wasn't totally my favorite is the ending, the very last things that you see in this. I was a little bit of a weird choice, I thought, and it didn't leave me totally satisfied in the emotional sense because I just thought it was a little bit weird, the very last things that we saw from this series, which is a little bit how I felt about, not that I thought it was nearly as good a show overall, but what was it, Gotham?
Where, oh God, I gave up on that.
You know what? It got better. Gotham got better as it went along. It was
I don't
rough
like things that get better.
I
like things. I like things that are better.
But Gotham, we had followed these characters since they were kids. Bruce Wayne since he was a kid, Selina Kyle since she was a kid. We followed them all the way along, basically watched them grow up on screen, and then at the very end of Gotham, they just jumped ahead several years and just had completely different actors playing those characters, people we had never seen before. It's not as though they had done flash forwards throughout the series and we had gotten used to other actors portraying those. They just jumped forward, completely different actors playing them, and that's how they ended the series. And I was like, that just feels a little weird to spend so much time with these actors at portraying these characters and then jump forward and have the very end of the show be not those actors anymore. So, without giving too much away about Barry, there was a little similarity to that that I felt in this, and that's why I was like, I'm not totally sure I loved the last few things that happened. But overall, very much worth watching the series as a whole. Very enjoyable throughout, and a satisfying conclusion, at least in the way that the plot all wrapped up. So I watched one other thing, which is I finally got around to seeing a movie, which was the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I did watch at home.
I heard that was good.
I enjoyed it a great deal. I mean, obviously you are not coming for some elaborate plot in the Super Mario Brothers movie, and yes, it is made for kids, all right? Like, get... Oh, no.
How dare they?
I know, exactly.
What do you mean it's not a dark, gritty reimagining of the Super Mario Brothers storyline?
They're
right. Plumbers fighting mushrooms, I think? I don't really remember.
They're not fighting the mushrooms so much. I mean, unless
I'm talking about the video
games.
Like I don't really remember. There's a monkey. There's King Kong or whatever.
There are apes. Yeah, they've got some Donkey Kongage in there for sure. No, I had a smile on my face throughout this entire movie. It was a great deal of fun. It was exceedingly nice to look at. The Illumination, the ones who do the Minions movies and that, I mean, I think this is their best looking movie that they've ever made. The textures on everything, like just the fabric textures, cloth textures, everything just had a really nice look, very appealing, and of course bright and colorful, and everything that you would expect looked fantastic in HDR. And one of the things that I was a little bit apprehensive going into this is a lot of these movies, I feel like your eyes are just darting everywhere trying to take everything in because there's going to be all the Easter eggs and everything in the backgrounds and stuff like that. There was a smidge of that, but I thought they were very reserved in how they did that. They didn't, like, I felt like Wreck-It Ralph, I was overwhelmed at times just trying to take everything in, which I guess is part of it. They want you to watch it multiple times or pause and look in the backgrounds, see all the characters that they've snuck in there. But I didn't feel overwhelmed like that with this movie. It was a really pleasant experience watching the entire movie all the way through. A lot was made, when it was announced, Chris Pratt voicing Mario, and no, he doesn't do the Mario voice throughout, although they put lots of references to the Chris Martinet Mario voice that we're used to. They put plenty of references in there, but he's doing a little bit more of a normal voice. I thought throughout this movie, I was like, oh, that was actually entirely good and watchable. Didn't take me out of the movie at all. I was a little apprehensive that it was going to just sound like Chris Pratt on screen. He put a little bit of an accent onto himself, and I thought he did really, really well. Charlie Day playing Luigi. I personally find Charlie Day's voice when he's doing other characters can be a little grating to me sometimes, but he was a fantastic Luigi. He worked excellently as Luigi. The whole entire voice, because, I mean, Jack Black was having a ball playing Bowser. He just completely hammed it up and was having
I don't think Jack Black does anything anymore that he doesn't want to do. Like, I mean, I don't think he does anything for money. He's just right. Like, do I get to be on The Mandalorian? Yeah, okay, then I'll do it. Right. Do I get to be in the Super Mario Brothers movie? I don't really want to do it. I get to be Bowser? All right, I'm in.
That's right. And yes, he gets to sing a song because he's Jack Black, and why shouldn't Bowser sing a song? So fantastic time throughout. Smile on my face the whole time. I did want to say I got this through Apple Movies, and looked fantastic, like I said, but this was, I think, full reference volume was set to 60 decibels or so, or 70 decibels, I think, because it was definitely not 85 as far as full reference volume goes. Now, a lot of movies are released at 80 decibels. That's very, very common instead of 85, but this was at least 10 decibels quieter than that. I mean, I don't usually put my master volume to the plus side of the 0 dB scale because I really don't need to. I did on this one. I was at like +5, which is like a good 15 to 20 decibels louder than I watch any other movies at my place. So it was quiet. And I'm not exactly sure why they need to make it that much quieter than reference, because people do have volume dials, even if they're just watching through TV speakers. Maybe because it's a kid's movie, they were like, well, even if the kid turns the TV volume literally as high as it goes, it still will not be a loud movie. I don't know what was going on there. Maybe it was just a glitch on my end, but I don't think so. I think they remastered this to be way quieter than it should be. So that was a bit disappointing, but thankfully I have plenty of headroom in my system, so I just cranked it up, and then it was enjoyable. How about Tom?
I saw Mother, which is the J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez as John Wick, basically.
Oh.
Movie.
Gosh, I don't even know that one. There's lots of movies titled Mother, so yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I didn't love it. it was fine. She did fine. My wife ended up watching the first half of it with me before she went to bed, and because it was late, and I finished it. It was fine. I guess. It tonally, it didn't really totally work for me. I felt like having her both tried. They both tried to soften her as not a John Wick because she's a mom and she's fighting for a kid who's not a dead puppy. So she's not just like avenging everything. She's trying to save her daughter or whatever. But at the same time, she's trying to stay emotionally detached, or she is emotionally detached from everything. Okay. So it didn't tonally work for me all the way. I think I remember when this movie came out, it got kind of middling reviews, and I kind of agree with that. The action was
literally
fine.
Don't even remember this movie being announced. So that's How long ago is this? How old is this?
I don't know.
Okay,
I didn't look any of that up.
Yeah.
It was just I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I'll press play.
Sure.
That's how far as I actually was going to watch the new Arnold Schwarzenegger show on Netflix, which is called Fubar. But I thought it was a movie, and when I found out it was a show, I was like, I'm not in for a show right now. I have to find a movie, and that's how I ended up on.
Gotcha.
Well, this is an action thing, so it was okay. It was fine.
Okay,
whatever.
It's brand new, 2003, and it is The Mother. It's got a "the" in there just to separate it from all, to separate it from all the other movies titled "Mother." So there you go. That's
I don't know. It might be. It might be just that my headspace was not right for this movie when I watched it.
Yeah. Or maybe it just wasn't as good as John Wick.
And I don't really need it to be, but I also, I felt like the character needed. So I can't remember the name of this other movie. There's this other movie that's like it's actually a remake of a Japanese, or I don't remember, some sort of movie. So it came, and it's about a woman who's been like held hostage and forced to do things she doesn't want to do, for men. And it's her basically finding something about her daughter. I don't remember if there's a daughter involved or family involved, but she's trying to get out, and she finally decides she has to because of something that's going on, and it's like this really ultra violent thing. And that character in that story felt much more like what they were trying to go for with the mother, and I cannot remember the name of that movie, but it was very good. But it gets real weird towards the end, like it gets very strange. But it's ultra violent, and this is what this felt like it was trying to be. But then they're like, yeah, but also John Wick, and we're like, either commit to the I care so much that I'm going to do whatever it takes to do the thing that I need to do, or I'm so angry and detached and traumatized that I can do whatever needs to be done in order to do the thing I want to do, which is kind of the John Wick side of it.
Yeah, so not quite Taken, not quite John Wick, trying to play it both ways.
They're trying to do kind of both at the same time, and that didn't work for me.
Right.
But overall, the movie was fine. I mean, as far as if you just don't pay attention to the story. I guess.
On the what we watched it just before we wrapped up this section, I guess I can mention I did as a bit of an experiment because I wanted to see what would happen. I started playing The Princess, which was a Hulu movie. So I started playing that. It's on Disney Plus, of course, for me. And that was one of the movies that they announced was going to be taken off the service. So I started playing that on the last day that they said it was going to be available, and I wanted to see what was going to happen. So, yeah, I don't know. Tom is still, like, trying to rack his brain about what movie this was. This was like,
I cannot remember this movie.
Yeah,
I can't remember what. You say I saw it?
Yeah, I remember. It's The Raid in reverse. It's her trying to make her way down a tower instead of up a tower. That was the clever little twist on it. And
I don't remember seeing this movie.
It is very violent and very stylized, and I was actually having quite a bit of fun watching it. It's got, what's his name? The guy who plays the young version of Tony Stark's dad in the Marvel Universe, Dominic.
Oh, yeah, something. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he was chewing the scenery up and having a blast playing the evilest of evil villains. So it was actually quite fun going along. But I started watching it on the day that they said all those movies were going away, and it was still there. The next day, I was able to continue the movie. It was still there for one additional day. Then the day after that, it was gone, and I never got to finish the movie. So I can't say whether it. I mean, I suspect. I know how this movie ends because it wasn't exactly trying to be any sort of a twist thing. This was a stunt person showcase. That's what the movie was, and I thought they honestly did quite a fun job of it.
I
but
never saw this movie. You've lost your mind. I'm just watching the trailer. I've never seen this movie.
No, I swear I remember you talking about it.
No, I have never seen this movie. Okay. I'm going to watch it now, but I can't.
Well, where?
Because
you can't.
I don't know.
It's gone. I don't know if
I
it's
look
available
like I
anywhere.
want to watch this movie. This looks like something I would want to watch.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Go on.
I think it'd have blast. So there you go. That's a shame. That was a movie that was interesting. It was fun. It was, nicely shot and everything like that. So, yeah, and they had a fun thing where it's like she's in this wedding gown at the very beginning that she was forced to be in, and she's up at the top of the tower, and as she makes her way down, like, pieces of the wedding gown come off at every stage, and it's like leveling up. And I was like, oh, somebody in the continuity department had fun making this, because they're like, we got to make sure whatever we're shooting that her dress is in the correct stage for where she's supposed to be. So anyway, too bad. I can't say go out and watch The Princess anymore. It's disappeared, so I don't know if that'll show up anywhere, but if it does, check it out. If it comes to Tubi or something.
All right. Whatever. All right. AVRant, the podcast that, for at least the time being, answers your home theater AV questions.
We still have plenty today, yes.
We may end up switching formats to just Rob and I talking about stuff.
Who knows? Who knows what will become of things. That's true.
But if you want to get a question answered to this podcast, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to AVRant, find our older episodes, including our show notes and our Flickr album, so you can follow along with the pictures. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can see our, well, at least this week, just Rob's face. And
there I images.
Contact us directly, Rob@AVRant.com. His Twitter's @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @AVRant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to AVRant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation. We want to thank Raph for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Raph.
Yeah, hadn't had a PayPal donation in a while, so that's very nice. Raph, thank you so much for your financial support.
Mm-hmm. We also want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where you sign up to become a contributing listener. Every month, they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us. So right now, we have 139 patrons, including Kris. So thank you to all of us.
That is right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, the minimum pledge is $1 per month. So $12 a year is what you can pledge to support us if you like to. And that is very much appreciated. So 139 patrons over there, some of them pledging more than $1 a month because they're generous folks like that. And Kris is one of our patrons. So thank you all very much. We appreciate your support.
If you don't support us financially, that's fine. We understand. Just do something to support us, and we'll mention you here. We want to thank James. If my wife was home, she would probably be grabbing the microphone for me and thanking him. James heard our plans.
Yes,
air
or
quotes,
lack of plans, as the case might be,
and promptly had probably a panic attack for us, and he sent over an email with some detailed information, and then my wife started emailing him.
Okay.
So they have been trading quite a few emails, and she's like, he sent me this. And let's put it this way, James, I'm hearing your name way too much right now.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's getting to the point where I'm getting concerned. She's like, oh, he sent me all this, and I didn't even ask for it, and he was so helpful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, he didn't send you any images, did he, of anything that I'm not supposed to? But no, James, my wife is extremely thankful. You've definitely helped our plans. I don't know that they've changed significantly, but they have changed somewhat because of the advice that he's given. And for those of you that were freaking out at their lack of plans, we now have more plans, but not all plans. But we have the first week that I'm gone on vacation, I'm being in San Francisco at a wedding, so we still have a week to kind of sort out some of this stuff. And right now we're just making sure everything's packed and the house is clean before we leave and all that. So we've got other stuff, and the dogs have someplace to go and all that nonsense. So thank you very much, James, from me, from my wife, from my family. We appreciate it.
Well, James, thank you for being Tom and his family's ad hoc travel agent. That's a pretty nice service to have provided back. So yeah, that's great. Helping each other out.
And we also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Kris, who's a what do we call him?
2 Hour Plus Club, at least.
2 Hour Plus Club squared.
Yeah,
because he knows all of the things you're supposed to say to prove that you're a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club.
He's got the proof.
That's right. And so Kris, Kevin, and Julian. So thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, thank you, Kris, Kevin, and Julian. We very much appreciate those notes of gratitude and encouragement. And Kris also, he says he hasn't missed a single episode since 2015. So that's pretty darn impressive. And clearly has listened to the end at least the opportune times because he picked up all the secret words.
All right, in the news this week from our listener Jay, Spears and Munsil have released the new 2023 edition of their Ultra HD Benchmark Test Disc. The retail price for the 3-disc set is $60, which is, I think, feels cheaper than it has been in the past, but that might not be the case.
It might be about the same price, honestly, but that is a 3-disc Ultra HD Blu-ray set. That doesn't feel so bad.
No, it's available for an introductory price of $48 at the moment.
Yeah.
Furthermore, if you already own the previous Ultra HD Benchmark disc, you can fill out a form. You'll need your receipt and to take a photo of your disc to prove that you still own it to receive an upgrade discount, bringing the price down to $30.
Yeah.
While the first Ultra HD Benchmark disc had over 1,000 test patterns, this new 3-disc 2023 edition has over 5,000 test patterns. Let me tell you how many you actually need. About 5.
Yeah, I don't think you need all 5,000, but of course, many of those are duplicates, as we'll explain in just a moment.
Yeah. Virtually all of those patterns are present in every flavor of SDR and HDR, including SDR in both Rec 709 and Rec 2020 color spaces, and HDR in Dolby Vision, HDR 10, HLG, and HDR 10 with peak luminance values of 350, 600, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, and 10,000 nits.
Yeah.
So, if
you want to see what your display does with 10,000 nit mastered content, which outside of video games is pretty rare, well, here you've got one that you know exactly what you're getting. So yeah, that's where you end up with 5,000 test patterns, because many of it's just in all these different formats. But that is a great way to be able to compare exactly what your display and your player, for that matter, are doing.
Audio tests in both Dolby Atmos and DTS-X are also on board. What? No Aura 3D? What?
I know. I was going to say they're going to have to bring out another edition.
Oh, no.
Because
what would they do for all these people who move their speakers because somebody on Reddit told them that the best upmixer was Aura 3D?
I know. I'm glad you spotted that. Yep, we don't have any Aura 3D in there.
What a loss. What a shame. How could they overlook such an important and yet totally dead surround sound format? It's terrible. Anyways, they have Atmos and DTS-X with discrete 9.1.6 channel tests and backward compatibility with Dolby True HD, DTS HD Master Audio, and good old Dolby Digital and DTS. I think that they did not having front-back discrete subwoofers and side-side discrete subwoofers. I
don't know how you would actually output that from any of the formats.
I don't care.
That would be that's the difficulty there.
I don't really care. I mean, they should offer it. It should be on there.
It's some way that no AV receiver or processor we're aware of knows how to decode. That would be something, Tom.
The fact that no one knows how to decode it doesn't mean you shouldn't put it on there. You just put it on there, then let them deal with it.
Maybe if it was an Aura 3D. One other thing I forgot to mention in the write-up, they have high frame rate stuff, of course, up to the maximum of 60 frames per second that the format supports. So it doesn't have 120 frames per second content, but it does have things in multiple different frame rates. So that is another thing that you can test out there, how your display and player handles things on the frame rate side of things as well. So yes, the $5,000 test pattern number, a lot of that comes down just from the sheer amount of formats that they're supporting for all of those things. But
I remember on like the
impressive.
DVD version, you'd go through all the cadence stuff, and there was 10 or 12 of those, and it's the same thing over and over again.
That's right.
But and you would look at the stupid teacup and the little line on the teacup.
Now it's the horses in the snowstorm. People love their horses in the snowstorm.
Also in the news, it's the 30th anniversary of HSU Research, or HSU Research, or She Research, I think is how you actually say it. And to celebrate, they're offering $100 off any order over $1,000, plus personalized phone call from Dr. Shu.
He says to just say Shu. It's easier for everybody, so that's what we'll go with. That's their instructions. Anyways,
he was an MIT student where he earned his PhD in engineering. He started HSU Research as a small family-owned business, making his first subwoofers from 7-foot-tall recycled cardboard tubes that played down to 16 hertz. That was back in the day of SVS and their cylinder subs, and everybody's going crazy.
It was even a little bit before SVS, so yeah, he started some stuff there.
In the 90s, he introduced VTF, which is variable tuning frequency, via optional port plugs, and the rest is history. So the man knows his stuff, that's for sure. And we have often recommended his subwoofers.
Oh, still a very good value. Lots of very good value going on with those Shure subwoofers, HSU. So yeah, happy to recommend them. And yeah, that's fun. 30 years in business. That is impressive. Got to be honest. Great series of speakers that they're offering now as well as subwoofers. So yeah, check them out. And if you total up in your shopping cart over $1,000 for the next 30 days, then you get $100 off and a call from Dr. Shu himself. So that's pretty nice.
Well, isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
Sony announced a confusing new peripheral for the PlayStation 5 that they're calling Project Q. I mean, who's in charge of naming over there? It's an 8-inch LCD screen.
Yeah.
Why would you want OLED? With a dual sense controls on either side, much like an oversized Nintendo Switch. But what's puzzling is how limited Project Q seems to be. The only thing Sony said it's for is streaming games from your PS5.
Yeah.
It doesn't play any games on its own, and they didn't even mention the possibility of using it for cloud-based games. So is it a Wii U gamepad?
That's what it feels like, if that's all it does.
The 8-inch LCD is 1080p and tops out at 60 Hz, no mention of HDR. Supposedly it's coming out in November. No price was announced. And if you can already stream games from your PS5 to... you can already stream games from your PS5 to any phone with officially licensed add-on controllers even. Perhaps more details at a later date will shed light on why Sony is deciding to make this a thing. And why to call it Project Q. Clearly, that's not the actual name of the thing.
I would think. I mean, the way Sony names stuff, it's going to be like the Sony PlayStation Portable screen. Like they just name stuff very flatly. But I mean, I guess it's nice that it's a little bigger at 8 inches than most screens. But it doesn't make a ton of. I mean, if this thing is more than $99, if really all it does is stream games from the PS5, then it doesn't make a lick of sense. Everyone's assuming that's a touchscreen because otherwise you don't have the touch pad that is in the middle of the PlayStation 5 controller, but that is a fairly safe assumption, I would think. One would think that the idea would be for this to work off of Wi-Fi and use their cloud gaming service, because they do have that. It's part of the most expensive tier of PlayStation Plus now, which is, I can't remember what the names are, PlayStation Plus Premium or something like that. I can't remember how they named things. But yeah, the most expensive tier gives you cloud streaming gaming, and one would think that is maybe, but they have made no mention of that. They just said this is for, your PlayStation 5 is on. It is doing all of the heavy lifting, all the rendering and everything, and it's just sending a streaming video out to this thing. It's not even for like remote play. It's inside your house. So I don't know. That's a weird one. It really does just seem like the next second coming of the Wii U, which was such a success. Strange thing for them to announce. We'll see what they end up actually making of this thing.
So, welcome to Netflix's crackdown on password sharing, America.
Yeah.
Netflix in the U.S. has now joined the rest of the world in only being able to use your Netflix account in one household or risk having your devices in other households blocked. You can separate a profile, keeping all your reviewing history and watch lists intact into its own paid account, or you can add an extra member to your standard or premium account for someone outside your household for an additional $8 a month. No extra members options for basic accounts or accounts with ads. So
yes, and they did say if you want to add the extra member, they must be within the same country as you. So no longer the same household, but still within the same country. I guess that's because ultimately there is still one primary account that is paying for whatever services, and they don't want you to be able to access a different country's content because each country has their own licensing and stuff for what titles are available. So welcome to the same restrictions that the rest of us have had to endure. I canceled my Netflix a while ago, and I honestly haven't missed it that much because there are plenty of other services and oodles of other stuff to watch, and I don't have enough time to watch barely anything anyway. So, we'll see how this plays out for them. I don't think they even really care. They do they even look at what changes in the revenue, or they just decide stuff? This is what we're doing now.
Lastly, we have a bit of a laugh here. The rollout of the new Max app, formerly HBO Max, has had some bumps along the way, not the least of which is that if your remote has a dedicated HBO Max button on it, something streaming services pay for, that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So
we broke our own button. Well done.
The new Max app does not use Apple's native video player on the Apple TV, so the automatic frame rate switching and dynamic range switching that Apple TV does best, those don't work with that Max app. So, yay, Warner Brothers, you're the best.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, I don't even really have to deal with it in Canada. We never had HBO Max to begin with. We don't have the Max app. We get all our HBO content through the Crave app, which is not fantastic. There's lots of stuff missing on the Crave app as far as hardware features go, because they don't do HDR whatsoever. They don't do Atmos whatsoever. So it's not a top quality experience on Crave, and it isn't cheap either, because it is HBO. HBO has always been expensive, but at least the content is available that way. But yeah, bumps in the road. I don't think they have any intention of switching over to using that native player in the Apple TV, because as was pointed out on several other tech journalism websites and podcasts, they're like, well, if they roll their own player, that means that they only have to keep that one player up to date and can use it across all the services, and they're not so worried about things like matching frame rates. Like, oh well, you get what you get. So yeah, there you go. You get to pay your $20 a month now if you want 4K with HDR and Atmos. So price has gone up, quality has gone down, number of titles has disappeared. It's just all good times. And if you press that button on your remote that used to take you to HBO Max, won't do it anymore. I don't think a firmware update is going to fix that either. The logos don't match. Whatever will they do?
Probably the problem there.
That's right.
Comments from our listeners. Kevin was in full agreement with most of what we said about building a seating riser. In his experience, he wants it to be inert, no bouncing or vibrating, and sympathy with certain bass notes, and he constructed his in a very similar fashion to what Rob described, a solid bottom with the added note that he used roofer's felt to protect the subfloor underneath, filled with insulation to prevent any resonance in the joist cavities, and 2 layers of plywood on top with green glue in between. But he wanted to give some hope to those who really want their riser to double as a bass trap. Again, he constructed things the way we described. The primitive joists are 2x12s that go all the way down to the floor, but all of the internal joists that are 2x8s all of the internal joists are 2x8s, and they are suspended above the floor, leaving a gap underneath so the air can interact with the insulation. He has a 4-inch tall slot ports on the sides and back for the air movement. So he did. Is that thing bent? Is that it? Is it?
That's just the camera.
It's a camera thing, right?
There's some optical distortion in the images. I think it was probably taken from a panorama shot or something like that. So yeah, the slots are actually cut into the top surface. So because the sides and the back go right up against the walls, so the slots have been cut into the top surface there. But yeah, underneath all of that, there is just free air movement underneath everything. So our warnings about that were that, of course, if you have these suspended joists, that could end up basically acting like a tuned drum to certain frequencies that you got moving. But yeah, he was mentioning, I don't know if you haven't read that part, right, where the 2 layers of plywood there, he thinks really helped out.
Lastly, he credits the double plywood with green glue on top as being the key to keeping the riser inert. And he apologizes to me or anyone else who wants to be able to remove the seating riser when it comes to sell the house, though. This is definitely a permanent fixture. So, give me a hammer, man. I can do it.
So, I mean, that's an interesting take. I mean, I did notice looking on the internals, I don't see joist hangers. So he managed to do it without even doing that. Looks like it was just nails through the ends of the joist going in there. So fairly simple construction. So yeah, I mean, without the 2 layers of plywood on top with green glue, which I think are, adding their own structural integrity, plus the damping, which is probably really important, having that damping of the green glue, the constrained layer damping that would add, is probably vital to that. So yeah, I will definitely take that under advisement. This, personal success that he is vouching for, not having any of the physical bouncing or physical translation of vibrations at, particularly resonant frequencies or anything like that into his seats from having built it this way, and getting to double his seating riser as a bass trap this way. So yeah, I'm willing to change my advice on that. But like he says, pretty involved construction. This is not something that you just slap together really quickly and lay down on your floor. This is, you got to be involved in this and take your time and spend the money and do it properly. But yeah, glad that you got those good results, and I will alter my advice moving forward.
There you go. Let's get to the questions here. Andrew from AV Gadgets. We might recall that Andrew picked up some vintage Denon gear a little while ago. He wanted mainly the tape deck, but he also got an old Denon receiver and a CD player along with it. The CD player and the tape deck both have manual push button on and off switches, and the vintage receiver has 2 outlets for it. But one of those outlets is switched and the other is not. He'd like it if the tape deck and CD player were both powered on and off with the receiver, so is there any risk of damage if we were to plug a dual outlet extension cord into the receiver's single switched outlet and then have both the CD player and the tape deck plugged into that? I would imagine that would be just fine.
Yeah, that should be fine. Typically, there is an indication on the back of an AV receiver that has outlets on there, because they aren't usually the full 15 amps going through those outlets that are built into an AV receiver. They are typically limited to 12 or sometimes 10 or even 8 amps going through there. That said, the power draw of a tape deck and a CD player, if they exceed 60 watts each, I'd be a little surprised. Maybe being older, they might be slightly less efficient, and they might be a little bit more than that. But I can't envision those 2 devices having enough current draw that it would be a problem for a single one of those outlets to do that. So yeah, an extension cord that's got 2 outlets on there. I would imagine it's just a 2-prong. I don't think I've ever seen 3-prong on the back of AV receivers.
There's not.
That would be
I've never seen it.
Highly unusual. So yeah, that should be fine. I mean, maybe just look up what are the power draws of those devices. Multiply 110 volts by whatever the amperage is listed. But I can't imagine it would exceed that.
Disturbingly, since Andrew does write for AV Gadgets, there are 2 articles on AV Gadgets that answer his question and give him a solution to it. First is there's one specifically about those power outlets on the back of the AV receiver, and it does. I seem to remember talking about that it does have them labeled for the maximum amount of power that they'll put out.
It should. But
then there's also I found a couple of solutions which are, way overkill for what he needs. But there are in your shop, if you have like a workshop or if you're the kind of person that works with wood or metal or whatever, there are these outlets, these power banks basically that you plug into your outlet, and what it does is it allows you to make one of the outlets a master and one or more the slave.
Right.
And then, so when you power on the one that's in the master, it provides power to the other 2. And the idea being that they're usually got like a little bit of a delay on them. The idea being that you power on your saw, and then it then in turn powers on the vacuum that's attached to it. Okay, which are both. All of these are very high draw.
Sure.
Units. So, it's expecting to put through the entire 15 amps or 20 amps or whatever is available. And it lists what the maximum draw is on these things. They're very conscientious about that because they know you're going to plug it into something that has a motor on it. Believe me, your CD player and
it definitely shouldn't be anything close to that.
Are going to be fine. So you could use one of these. You plug if
for some reason the switched outlet on your AV receiver doesn't work, or you simply don't have one. If you had a different AV receiver that doesn't have switched outlet on the back of it, then this is still a way. Yeah, and I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be one designed for a shop. There are plenty of things from APC, from other power companies that are maybe a little more home theater centric that will have that type of switched outlet set up where you've got the one master switch, and when it detects that there is now a current draw coming out of there, it turns on the other outlets that are connected to it.
Yes. Raph asks, what's our take on the REL 3D subwoofer setup?
I'm so glad you are here this week for this, because this is going to be some fun to get Tom's take on all this.
So this is the approach, using 3 or 4 subwoofers. Well, we've already got a problem right there, because I think I specifically wrote an article that says why 2 or 4 subwoofers is better than 3 or 1 or something like that.
I mean, there are the instances with the multi-sub optimizer software where we're happy to use 3, so not entirely that. But this is REL's approach, REL's approach, and it's going to be a fun time.
All right, here we go. Step 1, connect the subwoofer using a high-level speaker wire connection to your center channel output. Set the center channel to large and put this subwoofer directly beneath your center speaker. Okay. That's... no. All right, connect your largest, most powerful subwoofer, because whenever you buy subwoofers, you should definitely buy them in different sizes. That's what everybody says.
That's what they're telling you.
Yeah. Again, you're going to be using a high-level speaker wire connection to your front, left, and right channel output. Set those channels to large. And if you're only using 3 subwoofers, connect the LFE pre-out to this subwoofer using an RCA cable. But if you're using 4 subwoofers, only use the speaker wire connections. Where does this one go? It says where it goes. Put this one anywhere?
Well, front of the room. Front of the room basically is
right next to the center channel one, I guess. Right between the center channel one and the.
They weren't super specific about whether it should be a corner or 1/3 away along the wall or anything, but front of the room. It goes front of the room.
Step 3, same thing for the third subwoofer in your surrounds, but this sub can be smaller because you're going to put it directly behind your seats and diagonally across from your front subwoofer. Again, if you're only using 3 subs, you will also plug the LFE pre-out into this rear sub as well. If you're using 4 subs, then the LFE channel gets sent to this 4th dedicated LFE subwoofer, and the other 3 subs only play the full range signals being sent to the center, front, left, and right, and surround channels respectively. There are reviewers, it says on here, written by somebody else, who swear by it. Is it a worthy upgrade or just a ploy to sell more subwoofers? This is the dumbest thing I've ever freaking read. This is the dumbest. This is a ginormous step backwards in both time and recommendation. Like if you were to rewind 15 years of my life, I might look at this and go, well, let's take a closer look and see what. No, let's not take a closer look. This is dumb. We know it's dumb because we have scientific data that backs up testing data, real world tests, modeling data that were then substantiated by the real world test. Mm-hmm. Okay, you know when this works? Let me tell you when this works. You refuse to have room treatments at all. Like you refuse to do any bass trapping or add any room treatments. Your room is non-standard, and you're going from 2 full range speakers to this whole setup with all these subwoofers everywhere, and you don't know what real even bass sounds like.
Well, it still doesn't work. I wouldn't say this is when it works. These are the people who are saying that who swear by it. They swear by it because the other option was, Klipsch towers. I mean, this works to some extent if you don't have any walls.
If you're listening in the open field or maybe suspended from a pole 50 feet off the ground.
In your outdoor theater with no walls within 50 feet of you, then this could function. I mean, I just wanted to prompt Tom a little bit to just talk about REL in general, because you've occasionally texted or forwarded me stuff that you've seen, not this exact advice, but other things you've seen from REL as a brand when it comes to subwoofers. So I just wanted to tease the line a little bit there.
The whole REL thing where they're like speaker level, line level connections to our subwoofers in order to make it's like. It's more complicated, and I'm saying this from the perspective of the potential buyer. It's more complicated, therefore it's better. And when you try to explain it to somebody and they're like, that doesn't make any sense, they're like, oh, you just don't get it. You just don't understand. You're not sophisticated enough to understand the bass, how the bass works, and how you need to have full range. Like, why would this work any better than what is the potential? What are you doing? You're co-locating the center channel, right? Because, well, first of all, this whole thing is predicated. The first step is predicated on the fact that, well, not the fact, on the idea that the center channel is the most important speaker, and therefore you need to have a full range signal sent to it, and the subwoofer needs to be co-located, even though that's not how bass.
Well, I mean, it's also completely making the assumption that you do not have a center speaker that is itself capable of playing all the way down to 20 hertz linearly. I mean, look, I'll put this in very simple terms. All they're talking about is if you have a two-way speaker, you've made it into a three-way speaker. Or if you have a three-way speaker, you've made it into a four-way speaker. That's all they're describing. All they're describing is taking a speaker that they are absolutely making the assumption that none of your speakers genuinely play down. I don't even know if they care about 20 hertz, to be honest, but that none of your speakers genuinely play full range. And so you are adding subwoofers to each of your speakers. You're letting some of the pairs share a subwoofer, but you're just adding a bass driver to your speakers to make each speaker individually full range. That's really all they're describing. About the only thing that is more complicated than that, it isn't any more complicated than that if you're doing their 4 subwoofer version, because they're basically just saying, make your 5 speakers full range individually. I mean, why they stopped there? Why not say have 6 subwoofers in a 5.1 setup?
Well, that would be ridiculous.
I guess. But I mean, you know, in their
you're
four,
just talking crazy talk now, Rob. Let's be real.
Right. In their 4 subwoofer version, the 4th subwoofer is dedicated to just playing the low frequency effects channel. So we've gone completely backwards there. We now have 1 subwoofer located wherever it might be located in your room. You can do that with a subwoofer crawl to make it sound good for 1 seat, but all your other seats will have a different frequency response for the low frequency effects channel. So in this instance, if you were to someone who insisted upon following this setup, I would actually say do the 3 subwoofer setup, because at least you're getting a front sub and a back sub. At least you're getting 2 subwoofers that are across the room from each other, both playing the low frequency effects channel. I mean, none of the other bass are the 2 subwoofers working together, but at least for the low frequency effects channel, you then have 2 subwoofers working together. But in their description, 2 different capabilities subwoofers, because they're very clear that the sub that goes on the front wall that plays the bass from your front, left, and right speakers, and possibly the low frequency effects channel as well, that one is bigger and louder and lower than the other 2 subs. And the subwoofer that goes at the back of the room to play the bass just from the surround speakers and possibly also the low frequency effects channel is smaller because, hey, it's close to your seats, so it can be small and easy to place. That is what they're telling you to do. I mean, we completely disagree with this. My flat statement is, much like people who come to us with questions about stuff they saw on the PS audio channel from Paul McGowan, where it's like, yeah, I can pick out a few things in every video of his where I'm like, okay, that's true, that's correct. But it is actually easier to just say, don't listen to these sources of information. I would not advise listening to anything that Rel has to say about Subwoofer Setup. I don't actually mind Rel subwoofers themselves. Like the actual product, the subwoofer.
Yeah, I think they're overpriced, but other than that,
but I mean, there's plenty of examples of things that are also overpriced and don't perform as well as a Rel subwoofer. A Rel subwoofer as a product in terms of what it can do performance-wise, I really don't have any beef with that. But their advice on how to set up subwoofers,
full stop. They're like, they have like a whole big articles over there about about subwoofer break-in and a bunch of other nonsense that is just, you know.
I would just
when I was talking about, you know,
adding
complexity, you know, I wasn't technically referring directly to what they were saying here. I'm saying in general they have these subwoofer with their speaker level inputs, and their general recommendation is to connect both the LFE and the speaker level to the subwoofer. Right. I'm like, you're not doing anything. What is the point of this? Like, what is your what do you do? What's happening? You know, you could just do the crossover in the receiver like you're supposed to and just leave it.
Sure.
Anyways, it's a frustrating company that I really feel like they are trying to differentiate themselves by giving overly complex advice.
I mean, I guess part of it is that, yes, if we look around at the majority of the internet direct subwoofers that we tend to recommend around here, fewer and fewer of them are offering speaker wire inputs.
Yes,
there are a handful of models that still do, but if that's something you actually need, like you're hooking up a stereo-only system that has no subwoofer output whatsoever, and the only way you could send bass to a subwoofer that you're adding is through the speaker wire inputs, then that's something you really do need to look out for and specifically watch for. Well, Rel, across their entire subwoofer lineup, always has speaker wire inputs, so I guess they're looking for a justification or to use it as some sort of marketing advantage. That's exactly what they're talking about, and coming up with all sorts of notions and advice, quote-unquote advice, about why using the speaker wire input is in some way better. So, I mean, we will flatly say, no, it isn't. We can easily explain, it's that notion that a lot of people still adhere to, that the ideal, if you could have it, would be completely full-range speakers, because we have full-range signals for each speaker channel. So there's that part of your brain that goes, well, logically then, don't I want a single speaker playing that entire signal? That is what the signal said to do, have that speaker play the entire frequency range. Isn't that the purest reproduction of it? And like I say, if you had no room, if you had no walls around you, then yes, it would be. And again, why stop at 4 subs? Why not literally have a subwoofer physically positioned below each of your speakers, because then you would have just transformed every one of your speakers from a 2-way to a 3-way or a 3-way to a 4-way or whatever. You've just added another driver in there. But putting all that aside, if you don't believe what we're saying, if you're like the idea of full range still makes sense to me, why wouldn't this work? Here is what you can do yourself, either with measurement equipment or without. If you're willing to put any sort of trust into your ears, you can prove to yourself why this is not the optimal setup, and you can do it if you're willing to put a little bit of movement and time into this with a single subwoofer and the speakers that you already have, as long as the subwoofer you has speaker wire inputs. You could do this experiment, which is simply, do this thing where you're sending a full range signal to one speaker and that same full range speaker signal to your subwoofer, and you're using the subwoofer's own crossover knob that'll have built in there, the low pass filter that's built into the subwoofer, to blend it by ear or by measurement, whatever you want to do. Play the sweep through that one speaker, that one subwoofer, and either just listen in each of your seats, at least across a 3-seater couch, or measure it if you have the ability to do so. Measure it, and you will see and hear how the bass response of that sweep changes from seat to seat. That's it. That's all you need to do. And that was not what any signal said to do. No signal out there ever said, well, depending on what seat you're sitting in, play different bass. No. You are supposed to hear the same bass in every seat if you're able to set up your system to do that. And in a room, it is unintuitive. We will fully admit, unintuitive to set up bass in a room as opposed to a wide open outside field or an anechoic chamber, because you have all of these bouncing bass frequency waves. So that is the only proof that you need. If you don't want to believe us, you can prove it to yourself, that the experience from seat to seat changes quite drastically if you just play a sweep and you have set things up this way. So again, when you're talking about reviewers in a magazine or something, did they actually sit in any different seats? Right? I'm thinking that can be part of this, because if you've only ever got one seat that you're listening in, could you theoretically tune things to sound pretty darn good in that one seat? Well, yeah, you can. Just like we say, if you have the single subwoofer that is the only subwoofer playing the low frequency effects channel, if you only have one seat and you take a little bit of time and do a subwoofer crawl or some other experimentation, you can make it sound darn good in that one seat. The problem arises when you go and sit in other seats of your theater and the experience is no longer the same. So could you, through some experimentation, set up subwoofers that just fill in the lowest part of the full range signals to each individual speaker that the speaker itself is unable to play? Theoretically, yeah, you could do that. I don't necessarily think having the one subwoofer directly below the center and only playing that is always going to work out. You might need to experiment with the placement of that to get that to work, but it's feasible. And then the other side of it is, through all of this, you are sending now a full range signal to each of your speakers. So, and there's nothing, there's no rolling off of the bass of what's going to those speakers. And they mention how, well, if your speakers aren't capable of playing that bass, they are naturally rolling off anyway. But I'm like, but there are speakers that will try to play that bass, that full range signal, and all you'll get is a bunch of distortion and noise out of them when they attempt to play that full range signal and just physically cannot. We've definitely heard speakers that just start to make unpleasant distortion when they do that. So, from a multitude of reasons, we can't possibly agree with this. And I would just go so far as to say, if you're looking for subwoofer setup advice, just don't listen to anything Rel has to say. We just flatly don't agree with it.
John, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the BIC tower speakers that John uses and the option to rotate the tweeter horn 90 degrees so that the horn will be wider than this tall. Tom mentioned that if John really wants a proper upgrade to the treble of his speakers, then getting new different speakers would be the real way to achieve that. So John was already looking around, and he has some options in mind. He already has a different center that Klipsch reference 2 series RB81-2. That's a lot of 2s.
Yeah, I know. Well, we have to differentiate because, of course, Klipsch's weird naming things where they've got the reference series, which is like the sort of entry level, and then they have the reference Premier series, which is like their bread and butter in the middle, and then they have, it's now reference 3 is the flagship, but it used to be reference 2, so this was actually like closer to the flagship end of the consumer line. Okay. So that was just their weird, everything has the word reference in it, so it gets very confusing. But this
there's
was
so many little, look like parallel lines in this thing.
Yeah, Roman numeral II.
Yeah. So Klipsch reference 2 series RB81-2.
Yeah.
That should be like a version 2 or something. Bookshelf speaker. So he has a center, different center. Is it the bookshelf speaker is the center?
Yeah, the bookshelf speaker is his center. It's a reference 2 series, so it was a higher end Klipsch, a fairly expensive Klipsch, and then his front, left, and right are BIC towers. So he doesn't have Klipsch towers; he's got BIC towers.
So would he be best off just getting another pair of those to have 3 identical high sensitivity speakers across the front? Well, I mean, this is the last series, so I'm not even sure you can get these.
That is the big challenge. Yeah, finding more of those identical speakers, I didn't like. Just from a very quick Google search, I didn't come across any, so this might be a bit of a hunt to find them. Klipsch is currently refreshing their entire lineup yet again, and they don't even seem to have the reference 3 series anymore. So, I mean, in theory, let's say he had already managed to track down a used pair of these or something like that and is considering buying them. I mean, yes, granted, of course, if you have 3 identical, all well functioning, because if you're tracking them down used, got to be a little bit careful there. I wouldn't expect Klipsch speakers to have any sort of problem just from, aging or wear and tear or something like that, but you never know with buying from somebody else used if they've done some damage to the speakers or something like that. So I mean, yeah, theoretically then you have 3 speakers all playing identically. They're going to still sound different across the front of your room, but at least the starting point is all equal, and Klipsch does have a bit of a characteristic sound to them. They don't measure completely neutral in their response. So that isn't a bad starting point. I certainly wouldn't tell you not to if you've already tracked down a pair of RB81-2 speakers and you're like, yep, that's affordable. I could get those. I wouldn't tell you not to. That's a perfectly reasonable thing. But if you haven't already tracked some down and your idea is I'm going to go out and find some, I don't know if I can wholeheartedly say that that's like worth spending all your time trying to track those down specifically. Yeah.
So if he were to go with something else, he's considering the monoprice Encore T6 towers, Emotiva Airmotive T2 Plus towers, or the HSU CCB8 large bookshelf speakers. Any of those leap out as the best option. None of those leap out at me as sounding similar to Klipsch.
There is that. Yeah. One of them leaps out to me as what I would get if I wanted high efficiency speakers for a setup like this, and that would be Shu's CCB8 large bookshelf speakers. Those are because the other two.
God, those are strange looking speakers. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Well, I mean, like the Emotiva Airmotive T2 Plus towers, they have very high power handling. Being Emotiva, they are very much a 4 ohm speaker. They dip down lower than that because they want you to kind of need to buy some Emotiva amplifiers to power them. They do have high power handling and pretty darn high output, but they're not exactly particularly high efficiency. And the Encore T6 are definitely not. I mean, they're just flatly not high efficiency, high output speakers. So that one I would definitely not go for for what you're asking for. The HSUs I would quite heartily recommend. I think it's perfectly fine to say bring in a pair of those, try them with your existing Klipsch bookshelf that you're using as a center. And if you're like, the timbre mismatch is just too much for me to bear, then, well, you save up for however long it takes and you get a third of the CCB8s and go things that way. That to me is a speaker that I would quite happily purchase for myself, particularly if I do need higher sensitivity, higher output capability. That one is what I would pick. Whether I think it'll really be a good match with your Klipsch center, I am a little hesitant on that. So maybe be prepared, just have in your mind, you know what, I'm probably going to want to buy a third one of those CCB8s, but it's absolutely fine to try the experiment.
Yeah, he really seems to be, he's got he's got bookshelf speakers right now, but...
he's got towers for the front left and right.
He's got towers for the front left and right.
And those big towers are high sensitivity for sure. Yeah. Like having the Bics and the Klipsch, that makes sense, at least from a sensitivity and output point of view. Yeah.
But then he's considering getting these bookshelves and then maybe the HSU bookshelves. And then
he's looking for a sound quality upgrade over the Bics. And I would quite confidently tell you that the HSU CCB8 would be a sound quality upgrade over the Bic towers. I'm pretty confident in saying that. So, yeah, out of those considerations, I would definitely give those a try.
So on a different topic, John has been planning to install absorption panels in his theater room for some time now. He recently found a source of inspiration that now has him very excited to finally get those panels put up on his wall. Mm-hmm. His kid plays competitive volleyball, which means traveling to lots of different gyms. They've been in all kinds, large, small, expensive, inexpensive, but never one that was acoustically treated until now. He always found it necessary to wear earplugs, and he's commented to his wife how even in the obviously expensive gyms, it's such a shame that none of the budget has ever gone towards acoustics. But in a recent venue with corrugated metal walls and a familiar design that has always been an acoustic nightmare, he could see they installed 2-inch thick panels on the walls and they had acoustic baffles hanging from the ceiling. Honestly, for the size of the room, there weren't that many panels and baffles, and they were well spaced out and all up high, but for the first time he was able to watch without his earplugs in. And not only could he easily make out what people around him were saying, he could even hear the coaches. It was crazy what a difference those acoustic treatments made. And you can see them sort of, I want to say they're like bent, or some of them look like they're broken, actually.
Yeah, the baffles on the ceiling, they just attached either end and let it like hang in a U shape, and some of them clearly like folded in the middle into more of a V shape. Yeah. But I mean, they're just hanging there on the ceiling.
And then there's a bunch on the walls all the way around. And then
there's some on the walls. But like you said, like they're pretty spaced out and they're up high. So it's not like this is some kind of padded cell of a room, not even remotely close to that. I mean, there's a fair number of panels because we're talking about a gym and not a room in your home. But given the size that we're talking about, it's a relatively small number. Yeah.
So first up, how is this not part of minimum code? Why design places where students are enjoying sports, but everyone there has to damage their hearing when there's such a simple fix? No one cares, dude. No one cares about sound. No one cares about sound. I want to say that this should convince you, if nothing else, that before you spend another cent on a speaker, you need to be doing these room treatments, because I cannot believe how many times I've had to say this, but treating the room comes before upgrading speakers every single time.
Like if you literally have no speakers, then yes, you need to get at least a pair of speakers.
That's fine. I will allow you to get speakers before you get room treatments. But honestly, if you said, I'm going to get both, which one should I get first? Room treatments. Right. Yeah. I would say room treatments first, because then your room will be ready to accept your speakers. Mm-hmm. And you won't be like, get the speakers and then set them up in your untreated room. Yep. And then you'll be like, oh, they sound weird. I don't really like these speakers. And then keep shopping and upgrading and everything else. And you forgot about the room treatments. So yes, you've already got speakers. Do the room treatments, and then you can decide whether or not you even need more speakers. Or you might find out that Klipsch sounds way different than those Bics anyway. So,
but yes, I mean, we do have, acoustic consulting companies like our good friend Herb over at Cross Spectrum Acoustics, and I mean, like, yeah, you're talking his language. He's like, yeah, for the love of God, like, can we pay some attention to acoustics, because it really does make a quality of life difference. I mean, I don't know. Like Tom says, people just they don't think of it whatsoever. And even if it's mentioned to them, they're like, well, it's not $0, right? This costs some amount of money, and it just is never a priority, because they're like, well, what difference is this going to make? How much do I have to spend to make a difference? Like, there's all these things that just immediately are roadblocks in a lot of people's minds. I mean, we've come across this even when it comes to homes, where people are like, yep, my significant other, they're just like, they don't want any acoustic treatments. They can't envision how it's going to be worth it, and they don't want the looks and blah, 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 right? It's just, there's a roadblock in a lot of people's minds. So, given that it isn't literally free and there is some expenditure of time and money that has to go into it, it's just, unfortunately, a super low priority. Why isn't it part of minimum code? Well, that's a lot tougher. Now you'd have to convince people in government that they're going to mandate people spend more money on a thing that nobody understands or appreciates. And I mean, I guess the only thing you
need to be talking to the insurance companies. It's not that's where where you would end up making the difference. It's not the government, because the government's never gonna fly. You can't get your spouse to let you put a couple of room treatments in your home theater room that is dedicated to being a home theater. There's no way the government's going to mandate that. But if you can convince insurance companies that the echoes and everything else are damaging people's hearings, and that way they're going to be liable for potential lawsuits, they'll start they'll say, well, you can do what you want, but your insurance is going to be higher if you don't put acoustic panels up. And then all of a sudden, look at all the panels going up everywhere. It's amazing. A whole new industry. It's acoustic. The acoustic boom is what they'll call it.
But I'm like, forget gyms. I want restaurants.
Oh my God.
Can we please get acoustic treatments in restaurants? I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I guess there probably are a lot of restaurant owners who like don't go to a lot of other restaurants, but I mean, even if they don't, I don't know why that isn't something that gets prioritized. Like, yeah, people are coming to your restaurant and they're gonna have conversations, and there's gonna be lots of people having lots of conversations, and I don't know. I mean, there is that whole thing where, isn't there some study that said the louder it gets, the more people drink? So maybe it's to their benefit.
I don't know.
I think there was something that correlated those two things. The more people have to shout at each other, the more drinks they end up ordering. So maybe that's why restaurants don't do it. But in a gym, yes, I agree. We're all on board here, but then all of us know about acoustic treatments and how it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. So we're in the minority, unfortunately. I don't know. Maybe we just have to be more vocal.
Of course, they can't hear you because of all the echoes.
That's right.
Second, he didn't exactly count how many panels and baffles were present, and he isn't sure how much each panel cost, but you could definitely tell the panels on the walls were only 2 inches thick, and the total surface area definitely wasn't 15 to 30% of all the room surfaces like we talk about when it comes to home theater. So it was a bit surprising when the obvious difference and benefit they made. Is there a way to calculate the minimum number of panels that will deliver a worthwhile difference like that? Maybe not for optimizing a theater, but we've had people ask about treating their wide open great rooms, and just wanted to get rid of the echo in their room open concept spaces. And the experience in this gym opened his eyes to how it isn't necessary to use a huge amount of panels, which is why our advice is as many as you can, which is so far away from 15% that it can't see 15% over the horizon. That's how far away 15% is. Because that as many as you can is probably 2. And you'll be like, 2 can't make a difference. Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
So, I mean, of course, in this gym type setup, I mean, this gym is not optimized to be a theater, and he's not making that claim. And of course, with the relatively thin thickness of these panels, it's predominantly just the vocal range. That's really all it's treating is the vocal range.
Yeah.
But of course, like you just experienced, when it comes to hearing other people talking in this gym, it's miles different. It's so much better having these treatments that, yes, really only treat the vocal range, but for the vocal range, make a big, big difference. So, I mean, would that be something that you could apply to a theater? Not so much, because in a theater, we're much more concerned with the bass, which is very difficult to treat, and we're concerned with the entire mid-range and treble, so you wouldn't be getting away with this little. But like he says, not optimized for a theater, just for, you've got a wide open great room. Is it worth putting anything in there? What's the minimum you could put in there that it would be worthwhile? And it is much less than 15 to 30% for sure. That 15 to 30% is a dedicated theater. That's what we're talking about. People are going whole hog, going ham, fully treating their room. What do you want to target? That's where we get to that type of figure, and that's where we get to the much thicker panels, and saying that 2-inch panels aren't particularly worth it in a dedicated theater. But for a wide open space, actually Acoustimac has a pretty good room calculator with a minimum spec. And if you work out, because they give it to you in terms of sheer square footage or how many of their panels, just to make it easy. Order this many panels for this side. You just enter the dimensions of your room. That's all you're doing. And on the minimum, they're basically recommend, it works out between 6 to 7% of the total surface area, which is pretty reasonable. Yeah, you get to about 6, basically half, right? We're saying 15%, you can start to optimize things, half of that, and you can still make a worthwhile difference. So, I mean, is this gym covering 5-6%? I don't know. That's pretty tough. But I mean,
but the echoes are so atrocious in there that the difference doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a massive difference in order for you to notice it, because it's so bad that any improvement is going to be noticeable, because you're going from just as bad as it can possibly be to, oh my God, I can. It's not ear splitting anymore.
That's right. But they have hung a fair number of those baffles up in the ceiling there, and they are spaced out, but panels on all of the walls. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think they're over 3%. I would eyeball that. They're over that, I would say, in here. So yeah, there you go. It just to make any sort of difference, particularly just for making conversation easier. If we are talking about open concept place, which a lot of people have asked us about, great room where the what they've got for their living room is open to the kitchen and the dining room and maybe a loft upstairs or that type of thing. It's still worth thinking about acoustic treatment. It can make a very real difference, and it doesn't have to be some gigantic number of panels. Will it be an optimized dedicated theater? No, but it can still be very worthwhile.
Jonathan, just for a bit of fun, Jonathan had forgotten about the special aging process used by Blackened whiskey, but then then he heard an ad for them the other day and remembered how they combined two of his favorite things. Their marketing, quote, "After the whiskeys have been combined in the black brandy casks for finishing, they're jolted back to life by the unmistakable earth-shattering music of Metallica. Using our proprietary black noise sonic enhancement process, the whiskey is pummeled by low hertz sound waves, which force the whiskey deeper into the wood of the barrel, where it picks up additional wood flavor characteristics. They all," end quote. They go on to note that, quote, "each batch of whiskey is blasted with its very own Metallica playlist, curated by the band themselves," end quote. Obviously, they're having a bit of fun with this, and it's a way for Metallica to collaborate and market the product. But is there any truth to the idea of using bass frequency sound waves to force the liquid deeper into the wood of the barrel? So one of the things we use to clean bicycle parts that are very, very greasy and dirty is a sonic cleaner. Okay, sure. And you may have, if your mom is anything like my mom, she may have had a cleaner for her jewelry at home, a little sonic cleaner where you would put it on your dresser or your vanity, and you plug it in and you throw your rings in there, and then or your jewelry or whatever, that the stuff that would get grody, and then it would come out super clean. Everybody was super impressed, and then like a year later, everybody forgot about that crap. But we still use it in the bicycle world, and one of the things that what will happen is when you first turn it on, the water, you won't really see bubbles, but there will be a deoxygenation, if you will, of the water itself. The water gets a little bit, it has fewer bubbles in it, or fewer, so that it actually, when you first turn it on, it takes longer to clean than after it's been on for a bit. Now, it also adds heat after it's been on for a bit, so I can't tell you that one's doing the other. But according to the material that came with the sonic cleaner, this apparently is part of the process that when you add new water, the newer water will not clean as well as the older water, provided that, all things being equal, because it hasn't been vibrated for as long. And that's what sonic cleaners do. It's just they just vibrate the water, which then vibrates the stuff off there. So do I think that this can make the whiskey go into the barrels? No, I do not think so. I am not.
Aren't the sonic
scientist.
cleaners high frequency?
They
not
are
low. They're high frequency, not low frequency.
I mean, they're not super high frequency, but they are. Yes, they are not low frequency.
Yeah, I think the claim of the low frequency. I mean, look,
it's silly.
It's sound is vibration. That's what sound is. Vibration through different mediums. We're used to, of course, hearing it in the air, but you can go underwater and still hear sound, right? It's vibrations. That's all sound is. So they're bringing the idea of, okay, if we jiggle the barrels, because that's what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about jiggling the barrels. Now, whether you did that with speakers, right? Transducers that take an electrical signal, an alternating electrical signal, and turn it into physical movement. That's what a transducer is. So whether we're talking about doing that with a music signal at whatever given frequencies and jiggling something that way, or putting the barrels in oversized paint can shakers and jiggling them that way, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about physically vibrating the barrels in some way. Would that force the liquid inside deeper into the grains? I mean, I guess if it were literally like a paint can shaker, quite violent, it would still only be the water at the perimeter, though, because you're shaking it back and forth. So it's not as though the water in the middle somehow makes its way to the perimeter where the wood of the barrel is. So if there were any effect from physically vibrating the barrels with the liquid inside, it would only be the liquid that is touching the outside that, gets any of this absorption effect from the flavor of the wood or whatever. So that's all a bit dubious. And then if we really are just doing this with speakers, they're not enough jiggling. They're just flat out tell you not enough jiggling for it to have done anything.
So if you jiggled the barrels, though, I do not believe that the water going in would make that much of a difference. But these are barrels that have had the inside of them have been usually torched at some point.
Sure.
And then of course there were whatever they said it was brandy or something in there, whatever before. So shaking the barrels could have knocked loose some of those particulates, which would then go into the whiskey or whatever the heck it is that they're putting in there.
Yeah.
And then they would that could be absorbed. And of course, if there were some sort of flavorings or molecules that got into the liquid, it would diffuse throughout. I mean, that's just natural. So could it make a difference? Yes. Is it because the liquid's going into the barrels? I don't think so. I think maybe, if anything, the barrels are things are shaking loose from the barrels. But
this is marketing. The idea that you're gonna play some music at your whiskey inside a barrel, and that's gonna add
and that
depth
Metallica
of flavor.
Would be the best music to play at them is ludicrous. There's much harder bands out there. No offense to Metallica fans. Metallica has never been the hardest band. They were hard when I was young. They were pretty hard, but even back then there was the real heavy metal guys were like, oh my god, Metallica.
And yes, to be perfectly fair in everything the way that this is written, I'm pretty sure they know they're having a bit of fun with this, and they're not actually expecting you to take it fully seriously, and not that Jonathan was, like I said, just having a bit of fun with this. But yeah, the notion, could this do anything truly, really, to alter the flavor? I would say no. That would be my answer.
Yeah, me too. Kris, several years ago, Kris brought a cheap TCL TV to use outdoors. It's only $300, so he figured he'd rather go through one of those a year versus spending $3,000 on a dedicated outdoor rated TV. And once you know it, that $300 TCL is still working just fine. He doesn't live in Florida, I'll tell you that much. But he was lugging it outside whenever he wanted to use it, and then bringing it back inside when it wasn't in use, which is why it's lasted so long.
That's right.
That's getting old now, and he hasn't in mind to build a cabinet for it outside and just leave it out there all summer. He'll bring the TV inside for storage during the colder months, and he'll just see how long the TV lasts being outside the rest of the time, but fairly well protected inside a cabinet. If we have any thoughts about that, have at it. Don't do that. But it's real quick.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit then. So, Yeah, I mean, obviously you can purchase like just the covers for TVs that you have mounted outside, and that is a thing. The weatherproof covers that basically just have a Velcro flap that you open up when you're using it, and then you can cover it back up. So, could you construct a similar type thing in the form of a cabinet? I don't really see why not. So, what's Tom's justification for saying don't do that?
Well, I mean, so I of course live in Florida, where there is a thing called humidity, and it eats everything alive outside. And we have humidity all year round. And I don't know where you live, where there's no humidity during the summer. I know like places like Denver. I have friends that live there, and their stuff never rusts. Nothing ever rusts because there's never any humidity there. In which case, it should be fine. You just throw a tarp over the top of it. But putting some sort of fabric covering or vinyl covering over the top to protect it from the elements, in fact, in Florida, will just trap the humidity inside, and it just essentially disintegrates on you. And we're talking about, grills that are well maintained, and cleaned often, but just having the cover on it, which you have to have because it rains. Like during the summer, right? You can set your watch by the time it'll 3:00. It's going to rain for 2 hours, and then it's going to be done. In New Orleans, when I used to live there, it was like 4:30. It would rain for 20 minutes, no matter what. During the summer, it just rained every day because there was just so much humidity that the air was like, nope, I give up. Let's just drop some of it, and it hits the ground and immediately evaporates back into the air, and it makes everything 10 times worse. So. Clearly, you live in some place where this is not an issue, and I appreciate that. That's fine. But I'm saying for most people, because I think that most people live in some place where there's at least some amount of humidity around or elements that you'd have to worry about. You're clearly worried about snow and the water during the winter, which is fair enough because of where you live, so you take it inside during the winter. For most people, we can't assume that just taking it in and out during the winter for the summer months is going to be okay. It's lasted this long because it's because of how well that you've been taking care of it. You've been lugging it in and out, and taking it in and out whenever you want to use it. If it's become so much of an issue, or you're just like, I want to kill it anyways, I'm ready for a new TV, which I think is probably where you're at.
There's maybe a little of that, yeah.
And in which case, have at it. But as far as for advice for this podcast. If you are unsure of how your TV will last outside, then taking it in and out is the way to go.
So, I mean, since it sounds like building this cabinet for it anyway, what if he had fans so that there's always air flow or air circulation? It don't allow the humidity to just build up like that.
That's a good theory. I will tell you that when the humidity is like 70 to 80% all the time, you're just blowing moist air at it. It's like convection baking with a steamer insert. It's just circulating the moist air around it. So, but that's here, and I'm clearly I basically live in a rainforest. So
yes, that's right.
There's I'm having a different issue, but yes. You can't just, in my opinion, you can't just enclose it inside of a box and then seal it in because you're just trapping it inside with whatever air that's in there. Clearly, making it airtight and then creating a vacuum is not something that most people can or even really want to do. But having some ventilation through it and adding fans might be enough for most places. It's not enough for here, but it might be enough for most places.
Yeah. Yeah, because we do have, like I say, those just, you can buy them at Best Buy or off of Amazon, outdoor TV covers. So, those do exist. And I mean, they'll say right on there, they're not meant for like literally a TV on a pole outside. It's meant to be like under an awning, that type of thing. But it's more to keep dust off the TV, if we're being honest. That's what those covers are for. They're more for keeping dust and maybe, the littlest bit of light rain that might spray under an awning or something like that. That's really all those covers are for. So yeah, if you consider it that way, that's what the cabinet function would be as well. And maybe consider building in some ventilation, some fans or something like that, then yeah. it probably won't last as long as it has lasted up until now, but it could be all right since you weren't all that concerned about the life of this TV anyway.
All right, so his real question about the audio side of things, the TV's built-in speakers are pretty bad. He'd like some external speakers for it that can also remain outside the whole time. Furthermore, he'd like to be able to connect those outdoor speakers directly with Bluetooth so that he can play music from his phone without having to turn on the TV. What's the best way for $1,000, or preferably less, to accomplish all this? Should he install a pair of outdoor speakers? He has his eye on the Klipsch AW650. And then power them with either an AV receiver or a Bluetooth Fosse amp that would remain inside, necessitating running wires from inside to outside. Just use a regular soundbar and hope the cabinet protects it along with the TV. Are there outdoor rated soundbars? And lastly, use self-powered outdoor speakers, although he hasn't come across any that have regular audio input plugs that he could use for connecting the TV. What's a recommendation? So you know that I am a huge fan of Bluetooth out. If you're going to
like portable speakers,
Bluetooth
right?
speakers.
Yeah,
almost all of them have a 3.5 millimeter input, and
they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I know the Sonos don't, so maybe that's where he was looking.
Yeah, maybe. But I just reviewed the Soundcore Motion X600, which I think costs about $250, something like that.
Okay.
It's a small speaker. Okay.
Yeah.
It is a small speaker. This is a small portable speaker. It has spatial audio, which is just an insane thing to say for a standalone speaker, because all standalone speakers have spatial audio because it comes from a space. Anyways, you can interpret that as being like a DSP that makes things sound more diffuse. That's kind of what it does. But sound quality-wise, this thing is pretty good. It's got a 3.5 millimeter input on the back. It's completely waterproof. It floats as long as you keep the little plastic thing. So, and then on your TV, you would look for like an RCA to 3.5 millimeter jack.
Or
cable.
a headphone jack if it has one.
If it has a headphone jack, then you're even better off.
And a lot of TVs, if it has an analog audio output, it is a 3.5 millimeter these days. So then you could just do a stereo 3.5 millimeter to stereo 3.5 millimeter.
This is a Bluetooth speaker, and you don't have to buy it. The Soundcore I thought sounded very, very good. I think there's a review up for it on Navy Gadgets right now. I was pretty impressed with how it sounded.
I mean, almost certainly an upgrade over the built-in speakers of a $300 TCL, right?
And it got like kind of stupidly loud. Plus, it's got the app, and you can adjust the EQ on it and everything. So you've got a lot of adjustability there. And then you're like, okay, well, what if it's not loud enough? Move it closer. I mean, it's a portable speaker. Then all you need is a 3.5 millimeter plug cable, and if it's not long enough, you get an extension. How hard is that?
And what about does this have to run off battery, or can you leave it plugged in?
I don't see any reason why you couldn't leave it plugged in. It's not. I mean, it uses the same thing. The problem would be it loses some of its waterproof. Because there's a little rubber.
Ports.
Even the ports are uncovered.
But I would think like that inside of a cabinet, probably not going to be too much of a problem. Or you could just put a little bit of goopy stuff around it when you've plugged it in, and make sure a little bit of silicone caulk or something like that, and make sure that it's watertight.
There's only two plugs on the back. It's a 3.5 mil and a USB-C for charging. So
for charging,
that's it. That's the only thing that's back there.
So my thought was, if you really are enamored with those Klipsch outdoor speakers for some reason, there are outdoor rated or marine rated is what I look for.
Stuff is nuts.
Yeah, marine rated amplifiers with Bluetooth and regular RCA jack inputs. So, I mean, one that's very affordable and absolutely would do what you need is from Pyle, Pyle. It's $66.34, a very specific price for some reason on Amazon. But, I mean, it is just a 2-channel, 50 watts per channel stereo amplifier with Bluetooth. And on the back of it is just regular RCA left and right inputs if you want to connect that way. So, again, as long as your TV has analog outputs, you're ready to go. Or if the only audio output your TV has is an optical audio output, there are very inexpensive optical to RCA converters that are like, under $15, so I wouldn't be too concerned. You can put those in some kind of little plastic tub or something if you really want to make them completely weatherproof, so it doesn't have to be very expensive at all. So I mean, this is well under the budget that you talked about, and will perform absolutely fine the functions that you talked about. Just a regular DC in power outlet as well. There's additional power plug terminals in case you want to put this on a boat, but you don't have to. There is a regular just DC line in that can work as well on that Pile one. Now I will say there's a specialized one, claims to be higher, sound quality, from Outdoor Speaker Depot, which is $300 with their OSD Audio Nero Stream, and that is fully weather rated. Again, it has Bluetooth built in and just regular RCA jacks on the back. One thing that the Outdoor Speaker Depot one has, including some like nicer looks if you were actually going to look at the thing, not quite as industrial looking as the Pile one that's pretty much meant to go on a boat, but it has an app, their own Outdoor Speaker Depot app, that the Pile doesn't have. The Pile's very basic, just a very, very basic one, but also very inexpensive, and absolutely does the job just fine. So one of those could be an option if you do just want to get regular outdoor speakers like the Klipsch that you already like, and that could absolutely drive things fine while being weatherproof. So options all around.
And like I said, there's so many Bluetooth speakers out there, weatherproof Bluetooth speakers out there. I just reviewed another one that I would not recommend, that's for this particular case, that is basically built for auditoriums. I mean, it is. It gets so insanely loud. It sounds terrible in a house. But you take it outside and you stand 20 feet away from it, it sounds great. It's so stupid that I was actually mad at it for, I try to give things a fair shake. Yeah. So when this product came for review, I was not impressed. And that's the Eco X Gear X Eco Journey waterproof speaker. It's a case. It has it's the speaker is in the lid, which makes the lid stupidly heavy and flops the whole thing over, and it looks as plastic as it actually is. But it has an insane battery life, absolutely nuts battery life. But who wants to sit there and have to sit 20 feet away from your speaker in order for it to sound good?
No, I think that Soundcore one you mentioned makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Infinite Gary. Every OLED TV review and setup guide that Gary has ever seen has said to turn off the energy saving settings right away. And for a bright room, Gary can understand how that makes sense, as well as for HDR. But for SDR in a pitch black room, he actually thinks it helps. Even filmmaker mode seems too bright to him under those conditions. But activating energy saving on a low made it more comfortable for him. Was this the intended usage, or he's discovered a little known nugget of usefulness? You've literally said, what you've done is so they put this in here so they can pass the Energy Star rating thing or whatever the rule was, that they had to only consume a certain amount of power. And you're like, but it actually can be useful in this one very specific, nobody ever's ever going to use it situation. It's like for SDR in a pitch black room. Okay. Yeah. How many of us are out there watching? Well, first of all, many of us may be watching in a pitch black room, but we're looking at HDR anyways, because that's the whole point of getting one of these dang things.
Why for an OLED,
why would we be watching SDR?
Well, I mean, there's still plenty of SDR content, so you absolutely could be watching SDR content on an OLED. That's not out of the question at all. I mean, what you can do is, honestly, filmmaker mode, there's the OLED light setting on the OLEDs, which is akin to the backlight setting if you were looking at an LCD. And even in filmmaker mode, they have it set kind of high sometimes, on the high side of what a truly calibrated in a pitch black room screen would be for standard dynamic range. So, I mean, you could just lower the OLED light setting. That would be the other way to do it, which is effectively what the energy saving does anyway. There's two forms of energy saving. There's the one that uses a little sensor, and so if you turn the room lights on, it will brighten up the image in response to that change in light level. And then there's the ones that are just basically sort of fixed amounts, but they do more or less just correlate with settings on that OLED light setting, just lowering it lower than most people would like to have it. So given that if you were to activate the energy saving, then it's on for all conditions, including HDR, I would err on the side of, if this is the way you use it, then I would just change the OLED light setting rather than using the energy saving as a method of further dimming the TV. That would be my take.
Right. Oh, wait, I have to scroll. Julian appreciated our advice regarding his home office that he's upgrading into a one-seat Atmos setup using his existing pair of KEF LS50 speakers along with a KEF Unicore subwoofer and an SVS 3000 micro sub. He's in England, so the monoprice monolith THX satellite speakers that we recommended to him as surrounds and heights aren't readily available. Yeah, I might be able to bring you some if you had asked earlier. Furthermore, music and movies really are the main things he enjoys for fun, and the budget isn't really a main issue. He really wants that flawless timbre match that all around, so he was very glad that we warned him away from using the KEF T-Series superflat speakers. So his new ideas that he'd like to run past us are... He's just really into those KEF R-Series meta speakers and simply wants to get a pair for his front, left, and right. He was thinking he would move his LS50s to the surround positions, and he would follow our advice and forget about trying to incorporate a single surround back speaker, which is good because it's not going to work anyways.
Right.
Any concern whatsoever about the timbre match between the R-Series meta and just a regular LS50s? No.
I have no concern with a timbre match between the LS50s and the R.
Dead on this. I got some questions whether or not you could actually tell them apart in a blind test.
Yeah.
So
I mean, again, we really don't think you need to buy R3 R metas.
That's okay.
He does want, and we got no problem with that because I mean we certainly think they're very, very good speakers. We were never coming at it from that point of view. We're like, we don't think we need to spend that much to get the results, but. If like, I just love these speakers, I just want to own them, it makes all the sense in the world. And yes, if you used the LS50s, those are some overkill surrounds, but they would sound wonderful together. I have no qualms using those two pairs of speakers together.
He was leaning towards the KEF R2 Meta speakers because he was thinking that their seal design would be better than having a rear port since his front speakers are so close to the front wall, but they are quite large, being an LCR speaker with two bass woofers on either side of the UniQ mid-range plus tweeter coaxial driver thing.
So they look like an MTM, but they're actually a woofer and then mid-tweeter concentric driver and then woofer. Right. So, but that's that if you're trying to picture it in your head and not seeing the image on screen.
The R3 Meta 3-way bookshelf speakers have a rear port, but also come with an optional port plug in the box. Which option would be better? I don't really... I swear people make way too much of a big deal about rear ports, I think. 90%.
They do have those port plugs right in there. So
it's not like you need the base.
That gives you the choice. You can try both ways. With the other one, you don't even have the option to try ported versus sealed. With the R3 bookshelf version, then you have the option to try it. Plus, I do think physically the R3 is going to fit better in here. You'd have to put those R2s directly on your desk, I would say, and then they'll still be taller than your monitor, which is all going to look a little bit weird. So I think the R3s are the way to go. They cost a bit less, which I know you said the budget isn't the big concern, but who doesn't like to save a little bit of money when they can? So they cost a bit less because they don't have that additional driver that you definitely do not need. And then I kind of like that now you can try for yourself port plugged or unplugged and make the determination that way. So I think that's the best choice.
With the KEF T-Series no longer being considered, he's thinking he'll go with two pairs of KEF's wedge-shaped Atmos modules, which indicate that they can be used either as upward-firing speakers or mounted high on the walls and as height speakers, which would be his intended installation. I think they have a switch on those things, don't they? They have a switch for which thing they...
I haven't seen them in person, the new one, so I don't actually know. But they might. Yeah, they very well might have a switch that says either upward firing or on wall.
I think that switch does very little, but it probably does something. Well, the budget isn't his top priority. The R8 Meta Atmos modules are way more expensive than the Q50A Atmos modules from the Q series. We've often said that worrying about the perfect timbre match with Atmos height speakers truly isn't necessary. Sony reason at all to think that the Q50A modules as heights, along with its LS50s or as surrounds and R3 meta fronts, would not make an ideal timbre match. Any justification at all for getting all of the R series meta speakers? Other than me not ever wanting to have to say this sentence again because of the all and R and all the sounds are killing me. Get all R series speakers so you can stop asking questions about this stuff. Okay, not that I don't like questions. Just always
drive you crazy.
not that I don't love answering questions. I do, but what I don't like is people continue to ask questions until I give them the answer that they want. So the answer that you want is R series all the way around is what you want, and that I believe will make you happy. Now, will sonically it make a difference over the Q? Absolutely not. But you will always look around your room going, look at those Q series speakers. Just look at them. Look at them being all not R. Look at them. I can't believe that they're not R. How can you be? How can you have failed me so? And that will be your reaction to looking at those speakers every time you look at them, and you will sit in your room, which, other than the subwoofers that are in there, could have almost all been done through DSP and headphones. But here we are with thousands of dollars worth of speakers a single seat, which I am 100% on board with. But you want to get R series. You should get R series. And I go with God. That's what I say. Go with God.
I mean, yeah, if money truly is no object and you just want the
You are talking to a man who has ascend Ross tweeters all the way around his stupid head.
Well, not quite all the way around anymore, because I only have 11 of those.
Oh, my God.
And I have to run 13 speakers, so I had to make a compromise somewhere. It was the only way.
The king of compromise, Rob.
Yes. And even I will tell you that for those what has to be front heights in my setup, doesn't make a lick of difference. I could put virtually anything up there and it wouldn't matter. So
but
yes,
it makes him happy to look around the room, and that's where you are. That's where you will be.
I'm in full agreement with Tom. Like my real answer for if budget were any type of concern or whatever, I would say if you use the Q series Atmos modules as your 4 height speakers, you have nothing to worry about on a timbre match sonic quality front versus having your R3 meta speakers as your fronts, your LS50s as surrounds. My goodness, is that overkill, but very, very nice overkill. And I would have no worries at all about using the Q series for the heights. But if money is truly no object, and even just the slight difference in aesthetics, because there's a slight difference in aesthetics between the Q series and the R series.
You can't see me on YouTube, but believe me, I am shaking my head right now.
I know.
This is sad. Tom's sad face. It's a waste of money. But
sure.
I just gave the same recommendation that Rob's giving. Both of us cringed because we're just like, oh my,
because I mean, it literally is like in US dollars, like almost $4,000 difference for those 4 height speakers, and there is no way you're getting $4,000 more better sound. Like, no. I mean, literally $0.
I think you're getting zero. Yes, I think that is accurate. You are getting $0 of improved sound. So.
But, listen. Money no object, peace of mind, even if it's purely aesthetic and that's the only justification you needed to go, yep, I'm going to spend those extra $4,000 equivalent in British pounds it would be, but that's what I'm going to do. Then I am okay with it because there are reasons other than sonic
I can't believe
quality.
He's sitting here thinking about spending $4,000 extra and he's telling us that monoprice speakers are too hard to get a hold of. I'm like, you could literally import them from the United States.
Of course.
You could have them shipped to you via, some sort of human trafficking ring, and it would be cheaper than buying the R series speakers. But
much.
But yes, I think you should get the R series 100%.
Okay.
1,000%. I think you should get R series.
Yeah. There'll be no disappointment in the difference between the aesthetic finish.
Do you think we shamed him into getting the Q series?
I don't know.
I don't think we have. I think he just heard get the R series and stopped, like press pause.
I mean, that's fine.
Never listened to the podcast.
It's not as though he's going to be listening to R series speakers, R series meta speakers all the way around and have a bad sonic experience.
That's right.
That's not going to be the case.
No,
so.
I know. And there's the thing is without being able to really truly A/B them and know for sure, there's always going to be doubt, and that doubt is what's going to bother him. And I understand that. That. It's so like I have become in the last, I think 5 years, I've just realized how much we worry about what people in the cycling world call marginal gains. Like they're so worried about marginal gains, like little like, oh, if I buy a titanium water bottle holder, that'll be 3 grams lighter than the carbon fiber one that I have, and it'll be this much stronger. That'll make a difference in my cycling. Like I had a guy tell me the other day he switched the type of tubes he has in his tires, and he's like, oh man, it's a game changer. I'm like, you have lost your mind. It is a tube inside of a tire, and you think the tube on the inside is a game changer? Mm-hmm. What about the tire? Did the tire not make a difference there? So it's not that I don't think that there are improvements, that like one speaker isn't objectively, measurably different or better than the other one. I think that subjectively, you can't tell the difference. Therefore, it doesn't matter what the measurements say.
Yeah, not from your heights.
No, I mean... Lastly, he asked what would be the optimal placement for his 4 height speakers. The Dolby diagram placement with the front and rear heights the same width apart as his front, left, and right speakers doesn't seem quite right to him in this particular setup. Should his height speakers be farther apart? I mean, it's a range anyways. I think Dolby now is talking about the width of the room and how far into the room they should be.
Yeah,
but
in the home Dolby white paper,
Yeah, so my height speakers, which I cannot express to you how little difference they make in my life. My height speakers, one is because of where the stud placements were on the wall. Right. One is just to the inside of the screen, one is just to almost, it overlaps the outside of the screen. So one is fully inside the screen, kind of in line with the, so it's the left height, front height speaker. At the left of that speaker is just about in line with the inside of the velvet border of the screen. The other one slightly overlaps on the outside, so it's kind of the middle of the speaker is smack dab in the middle. Is on that outside line of the border of my screen, right? And I cannot tell you how many times I've looked up and go, I should move those things. And then I go, what are you talking about, you fool? It's going to make no difference, and you're going to have to go through all this work to do it. Don't do it. And so if you're going, should they be exactly right here or a little bit over to no one cares. You won't care. Just move them to wherever, within the general vicinity. These are not supposed to be super precisely placed.
This room is so small and he's so close to everything. Yeah. Even the height speakers, he's close to that. It's going to be kind of difficult to be outside the range that's recommended. So just to lay it out there, in the white paper for the home version of Dolby Atmos, Dolby's written up thing, not the diagram that you look at, which very much does look like they have everything in a line from the front of the room to the back of the room. The write-up just says, take the width of your room and then have the overhead speakers anywhere from half the width of the room to 3/4 of the width of the room apart from each other. And that's how it's described now. So you could follow that, or you could just go the angle route and follow things that way, which, look, if you are sitting in your seat and here are the angles to my front, left, and right speakers, but now I extend that same azimuth angle, right? The left to right angle. I extend that, but I'm also adding the elevation. Well, then the height speakers will be slightly wider apart, right? Because they're a little bit farther away from you by virtue of adding the height of your room, but you've kept the same azimuth angle. So by the time you get to the end of that line up where your wall intersects your ceiling, that's a little bit wider apart than the speakers that are directly in front of you and perhaps a little bit closer. So if you just want to go by the angle, take the angle. If you're satisfied with the azimuth angle of your front, front, left, and right speakers. Just extend that line, that same azimuth angle, up to your ceiling, and that will be the width of your height speakers. I think for someone who is this worried about the minutia of it, that would be the way I would tell them to go, because then it gives you a nice, clean reasoning for why the speakers are exactly there, and it all makes sense. So that's what I would tell you to do. Follow the angle of your speakers and do that front and back.
Yeah. Should we save the last question for next week, Rob, for you?
Why? No.
Okay.
It's a very short one.
Mark has 3 Klipsch Synergy Black F300 speakers across the front. Their specs rate them at 8 ohms nominal with 150 watts RMS power handling, 600 watt peak. He's got an old Speakercraft 8-channel amplifier that's rated at 65 watts per channel, but each pair of outputs has a switch to let you bridge them together if you want to. It's rated to deliver 120 watts in the 8 ohms bridge. He just wants to make sure it's safe to run the amplifier that way with these speakers. So he wants to know if we can do it bridged.
Yes. Bridged amplifier, rated 120 watts into 8 ohms.
Yeah,
and the Klipsch Synergy speakers, which are 8 ohms nominal. Yeah. Absolutely safe to do that. No problem whatsoever. I mean, being the Klipsch speakers, unless you're fairly far away with them, you're probably not going to notice much difference. And then on the side of, okay, is it okay to use a 120 watts amplifier into a speaker that's rated for up to 150 watts RMS or even 600 watts peak? Yes, still fine. Will you be able with that amplifier to drive those speakers as loud as they can possibly go? No. You don't have quite that much wattage on hand to drive those speakers as high as they can possibly go. But unless you are cranking your volume dial way, way up, basically as high as it goes, then yeah, you've got a pretty darn good match there between 120 watts available on hand and 150 watts power handling. So I think you are absolutely safe to do that.
Yes. All right. That's it for this week.
That is it. So, I mean, we have to wish Tom and his family a safe and happy trip. It's going to be quite the adventure going on there. So happy travels, safe travels.
That's right. So this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Raph for going to AVRant and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 139 patrons over at patreon.com, including Kris. Thank you, guys.
That is right, Raph. Thank you so much for the PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 139 patrons over there. Kris, thank you for being one of them.
We also want to especially thank James for helping out, mostly my wife, with the plans for our trip. So thank you, James.
Right. Yeah, James, that was very nice of you, and obviously they appreciate it. You've heard from Tom's wife directly, so you know how much they appreciate that. And thank you very much.
That's right. And we got some notes of gratitude from Kris, Kevin, and Julian. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, Kris, Kevin, and Julian, thank you all very much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're very much appreciated, and a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And do send in your questions. We've reached the end of our list. We don't have any left over for next week, so I will have a guest co-host with me next week, and we'll dig into whatever is sent to us. It's an optimal time.
There you go. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.